The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the oak-lined streets of Charlottesville, Virginia, on April 17, 2012. It was a Tuesday, unremarkable in every way except for what would happen in the next 37 minutes. Rachel Campbell stood at her kitchen window, stirring honey into her tea, watching the clock tick toward 3:45 p.m. That's when Noah's bus usually pulled up to the corner of Ivy Lane and Prospect Avenue, 2 blocks from their modest colonial house. She had done this 1,000 times. Wait by the window, watch for the yellow bus, see her 8-year-old son hop off the last step, his Star Wars backpack bouncing against his small frame. Wave to Mrs. Henderson, the bus driver. Watch Noah cross the street, always looking both ways just like she taught him. Rachel took a sip of tea, the warmth spreading through her chest. Through the window she could see Mr. Petrosky trimming his hedges next door, the electric buzz of his trimmer breaking the quiet suburban peace. The Bradford pear trees were in full bloom, their white petals drifting across lawns like late snow. Spring in Virginia had always been her favorite season. 3:47 p.m. The bus should be here any minute. Rachel set down her mug and moved toward the front door, intending to step onto the porch. That's when her phone rang. Her mother, probably calling about Sunday dinner. She hesitated, hand on the doorknob, then answered. "Mom, can I call you back? Noah's about to..." "I'll be quick, sweetheart. I just wanted to know if Noah still wants that Lego set for his birthday next month." Rachel glanced at the clock again. 3:49 p.m. "Yes, the Death Star one. Mom, I really need to... Found it on sale at Target. Should I grab it now or wait?" "Grab it now. Listen, I have to go." Rachel ended the call, a slight irritation prickling at the back of her mind. She pulled open the front door and stepped onto the porch. The bus wasn't at the corner yet. That was odd. It was never more than a minute or two late. She walked down her driveway, shielding her eyes against the afternoon sun. Ivy Lane stretched empty in both directions. Mr. Petrosky waved at her from his yard. "Bus late today?" "Seems like it," Rachel called back, forcing a smile. At 3:55 p.m. she called the school. The receptionist, Mrs. Chen, answered on the third ring. "Woodbrook Elementary. How may I help you?" "Hi, this is Rachel Campbell, Noah's mom. He was supposed to be on the 3:45 bus, but it hasn't arrived yet. Is everything okay?" There was a pause, just a second, too long. "Let me check with transportation, Mrs. Campbell. Can you hold?" The hold music was an instrumental version of Don't Worry, Be Happy, which suddenly felt deeply inappropriate. Rachel's heart began to thump harder. She told herself she was being ridiculous. Buses ran late all the time. Traffic, a longer route, a substitute driver who didn't know the schedule. Mrs. Chen came back on the line. "Mrs. Campbell, according to our records, Noah wasn't on the bus today. Actually," another pause, "he wasn't in his last 2 classes. We assumed he went home sick. Did you pick him up early?" Rachel's world tilted. "What? No, I didn't pick him up. What do you mean he wasn't in class?" "I'm looking at the attendance now. He was marked present for morning classes, lunch, and then absent for 5th period and dismissal. Let me connect you with Principal Bradshaw right away." The next 20 minutes dissolved into a blur of phone calls, each one ratcheting up Rachel's panic. Principal Bradshaw was apologetic, confused, scrambling to check with teachers. Noah's last teacher, Mr. Patterson, remembered seeing him head toward the playground after lunch, but assumed he went inside when the bell rang. No one had called to report his absence from afternoon classes. A clerical error, maybe. A substitute teacher who didn't know the protocol. At 4:17 p.m., Rachel called the Charlottesville Police Department. Detective Marcus Webb arrived at 4:43 p.m., a tall man in his early 50s with gray temples and sharp blue eyes that had seen too many of these calls. Most of them ended well: kids at a friend's house, miscommunications, divorced parents forgetting custody schedules. But some didn't. The first few hours were critical. "Mrs. Campbell, I need you to walk me through today," Webb said, settling onto the living room couch, his notebook open. "Start from this morning." Rachel's hands trembled as she gripped her coffee mug, her 3rd cup, though she couldn't remember making the last 2. Noah woke up at 6:30. We had breakfast together. Cereal, orange juice. He seemed fine, happy even. He was excited about a field trip coming up next week to Monticello. Did he mention anything unusual? Any problems at school? New friends? Anyone bothering him? No, nothing. He's a good kid, quiet. He likes reading, science fiction mostly. He doesn't get into trouble. Rachel's voice cracked. "Where is he?" "We're going to find him," Webb said, his tone practiced but genuine. What was he wearing today? Blue jeans, a red t-shirt with a spaceship on it, white sneakers with Velcro straps, his Star Wars backpack. Webb wrote everything down. Does Noah have a cell phone? No, he's 8. I kept saying maybe when he's older. Does he know your phone number? His address? Yes, of course, I drilled that into him. Good, that's good. Webb looked up. Mrs. Campbell, I have to ask, is Noah's father in the picture? Rachel stiffened. This was the question she'd been dreading. His father. David passed away. Car accident when Noah was 3. I'm sorry. Webb's expression softened. Any other family members? Grandparents? Uncles? My parents live in Richmond. David's parents died before Noah was born. Rachel hesitated. There's my ex-boyfriend, Marcus. Marcus Holt. We broke up about 6 months ago. Webb's pen stopped moving. Tell me about Marcus. We dated for almost 2 years. He was good with Noah at first, but things got complicated. He wanted more commitment, marriage. I wasn't ready. He took it hard, really hard. Hard how? He'd show up unannounced, call at odd hours. Nothing threatening, just intense. He kept saying I was making a mistake, that Noah needed a father figure. I finally had to tell him to stop contacting me about a month ago. Did he stop? Rachel looked down at her hands. Mostly. He sent a birthday card for Noah last month, even though his birthday isn't until May. It was weird. The card said, "See you soon, buddy." Webb underlined something in his notebook. Do you still have the card? I think so. In the kitchen drawer. While Webb examined the card, a generic happy birthday design with a baseball on the front, Rachel's phone rang. It was the school again, Principal Bradshaw. Mrs. Campbell, we reviewed the security camera footage from today. Rachel put the call on speaker. What did you find? Noah left school grounds at approximately 1:47 p.m. during lunch recess. He went through the back gate near the playground. It's usually locked, but someone left it unlatched. Webb leaned forward. Did the cameras show who he left with? That's the thing, Bradshaw said, his voice tight. He appeared to leave alone. He walked through the gate and disappeared into the residential area behind the school. The cameras don't cover beyond our property line. By 6 p.m., search teams fanned out across the Belmont neighborhood. Volunteers, off-duty officers, neighbors, dozens of people with flashlights calling Noah's name. Rachel walked with them, her voice growing hoarse, her legs moving on autopilot. The spring evening turned cool, and she thought about Noah without a jacket, wherever he was. At 7:34 p.m., Officer Jenny Ramirez found Noah's bicycle. It was lying on its side near the entrance to Riverview Trail, a wooded path that wound along the Rivanna River for 2 miles. The bike was undamaged, Noah's helmet still clipped to the handlebars. 20 feet into the woods, they found his backpack, its contents scattered across the pine needles. Textbooks, a lunchbox, pencils, a small plastic figurine of Darth Vader. Mrs. Campbell, when did Noah get this bicycle? Webb asked, photographing the scene. Christmas, 3 months ago. He loved riding it to the park. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. He wasn't supposed to ride it to school. The rule was only on weekends with me. So how did it get here? I don't know. It should be in our garage. The implications crashed over Rachel like cold water. Someone had taken the bike from their property. Someone had planned this. Oh God, he's been taken, hasn't he? Webb didn't answer directly. We're treating this as a critical missing persons case. I've called for K9 units and we're expanding the search to a 5-mile radius. The dogs arrived as darkness fell. German shepherds straining at their leashes, sniffing Noah's bedroom pillow, his dirty clothes, catching his scent. They tracked from the bike to the woods, deeper into Riverview Trail, their handlers following with high-powered flashlights. Rachel watched from the edge of the woods, held back by a female officer who kept saying, "Let them work, ma'am. Please let them work." At 10:52 p.m., the dogs stopped at a clearing near the river. There was nothing there. No evidence, no Noah. The trail went cold. The handlers exchanged glances. One of them approached Webb. "Sir, it's like the scent just ends. Either they got into a vehicle here or what?" Rachel demanded, pushing past the officer. "Or what?" Webb turned to her, his face grave in the flashlight beams. "Or they went into the water. Dive teams arrived before dawn." The Rivanna River ran black under the pre-dawn sky, its surface rippling with the first movement of the dive team. Rachel sat on the hood of a police cruiser wrapped in a thermal blanket someone had draped over her shoulders, watching wetsuited figures descend into the water with underwater flashlights that glowed like dying stars beneath the surface. Detective Webb stood beside her, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating with the Virginia State Police. An Amber Alert had gone out at 11:47 p.m. Noah's face now broadcast across every highway sign, news station, and smartphone in the state. 8 years old, 3 feet 9 inches, sandy brown hair, green eyes. Last seen wearing a red spaceship t-shirt and blue jeans. "They won't find him in there," Rachel said, her voice hollow. She'd been awake for 24 hours straight, running on adrenaline and terror. Noah's afraid of deep water. He wouldn't go near the river voluntarily. Webb lowered his phone. "That's actually helpful information, Mrs. Campbell. It supports the theory that he left with someone he trusted." "Marcus," Rachel whispered. "It has to be Marcus. We've got units heading to his last known address right now. Should have eyes on him within the hour." But Rachel's mind was spiraling through memories she'd tried to bury. Marcus Holt, 36 years old, worked in IT at the university. Seemed perfect when they first met at a faculty mixer 2 years ago. He'd been patient with Noah, playing catch in the backyard, helping with homework, teaching him chess. Noah had even started calling him Coach Marcus. Then the cracks appeared. The jealousy, the control. Marcus wanted to know where she was every minute, who she talked to, why she didn't answer her phone immediately. When she tried to create boundaries, he'd accused her of not appreciating him, of using him as a replacement father for Noah, and then throwing him away. The final straw came 3 months ago, when Rachel found Marcus in Noah's room at 2 a.m. He claimed he'd heard a noise and was checking on the boy, but something about the scene felt wrong. Marcus standing over Noah's sleeping form in the darkness, just watching. Rachel ended things the next morning. "Detective," a young officer approached, slightly out of breath. "We found something." They followed him 50 yards downstream to where the woods thickened. Caught on a low branch overhanging the water was a scrap of red fabric. Webb pulled on latex gloves, carefully removing it. The material was wet, torn, but unmistakable. The same bright red as Noah's spaceship shirt. Rachel's legs gave out. Webb caught her before she hit the ground. No, please God, no. "Mrs. Campbell, listen to me." Webb gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "This doesn't mean what you think. If he went in the water here, the current would have carried him downstream. The dive team would have found him by now. Someone could have planted this. Or it could be from weeks ago. Unrelated. We test everything." But Rachel barely heard him. The world had narrowed to that small piece of red fabric, now sealed in an evidence bag, labeled and cataloged. Her son reduced to a piece of torn cloth on a tree branch. The sun rose at 6:47 a.m., washing the scene in golden light that felt obscene in its beauty. The dive team emerged empty-handed. No body. No more evidence. The dogs were brought back to track again, but the scent trail remained cold at the clearing. By 8 a.m., Marcus Holt's apartment on West Main Street was swarming with police. Rachel sat in the back of Webb's unmarked sedan, watching through tinted windows as officers emerged from the building carrying cardboard boxes. Marcus was led out in handcuffs, his face pale and shocked, dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing sweatpants and a faded UVA t-shirt, his hair disheveled. He looked like he'd been asleep when they knocked. "I didn't do anything," Marcus's voice carried across the parking lot. "I don't know where Noah is. Rachel, tell them." Webb turned to Rachel. "Do you want to see him? Talk to him?" "Can I?" "Not officially, but—" Webb hesitated. "Sometimes a parent's instinct picks up on things we miss. Body language, tone. I'll be right there with you." They approached the police cruiser where Marcus sat in the back seat. When he saw Rachel, his face crumpled. "Rach, Jesus Christ, they think I took Noah. They think I hurt him. You know me. You know I would never—" "Where is he?" Rachel's voice came out stronger than she felt. "If you know anything at all, please tell me. I won't be angry. I just want him back." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I swear on my mother's grave I don't know where he is. I haven't seen Noah since February when I dropped off that birthday card. I've been trying to move on, just like you told me to. I got counseling. I've been taking medication for the anxiety. I would never hurt that kid. He was like a son to me." "Then explain the card," Webb interjected. "The one that said, 'See you soon, buddy.' What did you mean by that?" "It was just, I don't know, something you write in a birthday card. I didn't mean it literally. I was hoping maybe Rachel would soften, let me see him again eventually. But I wasn't planning anything, I swear." An officer emerged from the apartment building carrying a laptop. "Detective, we'll need to go through his computer, check his search history, emails." "Do it," Webb said. He turned back to Marcus. "We're also going to need your whereabouts for yesterday, April 17th, specifically between 1 and 6 p.m. Marcus wiped his eyes with his shoulder, unable to use his cuffed hands. I was at work. I'm in the IT department at UVA. We have badge swipe records. I left for lunch around noon, went to Subway on the corner, came back at 12:45, worked until 5:30, went home, ordered pizza, watched Netflix. My neighbors probably saw me come in. Checked the security cameras at my building. Webb made notes. We will. What about before yesterday? Have you been to Woodbrook Elementary recently? What? No. Why would I go there? The back gate, the one Noah left through, was found unlatched. Someone had to unlatch it. Marcus shook his head vigorously. I don't even know which gate you're talking about. I only ever dropped Noah off at the front entrance, and that was months ago. Rachel studied his face, searching for deception, for the smallest crack in his story, but all she saw was genuine fear and confusion. Either Marcus was an exceptional liar, or he was telling the truth. Detective, another officer called out, found something in his closet. They walked over. The officer held up a shoebox filled with photographs. Pictures of Rachel and Noah. Some were clearly taken at public events, the park, the farmer's market, but others were more disturbing. Photos of Rachel through her kitchen window, Noah playing in the backyard, their house from across the street. I can explain, Marcus said desperately. I missed you both. I know it looks bad, but I wasn't stalking you. I just drove by sometimes. I never approached, never tried to contact Noah directly. Except you did contact him, Webb said coldly. The birthday card. I sent it to the house, to Rachel. I didn't give it to him in person. The interrogation continued at the police station. Rachel waited in a conference room drinking terrible vending machine coffee, while Webb and his team grilled Marcus for 3 hours. She watched through the one-way glass as Marcus maintained his story, consistent on every detail, offering his phone password, his laptop password, his work ID to verify his alibi. By noon, Marcus's lawyer had arrived, a sharp woman in her 40s named Patricia Valdez, who shut down further questioning immediately. My client has cooperated fully. He's provided you with his complete whereabouts, access to his devices, and consented to searches. Unless you're charging him with something, we're done here. Webb emerged from the interrogation room, frustration evident in his tight jaw. His alibi checks out. Badge swipe at UVA confirms he was at work from 12:45 to 5:30. Building security footage shows him entering his apartment at 6:03 p.m. Pizza delivery confirmed at 7:15. Unless he has an accomplice, he couldn't have taken Noah. But the photos are creepy as hell, but not illegal. He never violated the restraining order because there was no restraining order. You said yourself he stopped contact when you asked. Rachel felt the floor drop out from under her again. If not Marcus, then who? What about the school? Someone left that gate open. Someone had to plan this. We're reviewing all school personnel files. Teachers, janitors, cafeteria staff, volunteers. We're also canvassing the neighborhood again. Checking home security cameras. Dash cam footage from cars that drove through that area between 1 and 3 p.m. Webb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression changed. We got a hit on a traffic camera. They moved to a computer where a technician pulled up grainy footage from a red light camera at the intersection of Sunset Avenue and Route 250, approximately 2 miles from Woodbrook Elementary. The timestamp read 2:14 p.m. on April 17th. There, the technician said, pausing the video. Blue Honda Civic, Virginia plates. We can't quite make out the full number, but we can see part of it. In the frozen frame, Rachel could barely make out a figure in the passenger seat. Small, child-sized. The technician zoomed in, the pixels fragmenting. It could be Noah. It could be any kid. Run the partial plate through the DMV, Webb ordered. Cross-reference with blue Honda Civics registered in Virginia. Expand to surrounding states if needed. Priority 1. The afternoon stretched into evening. The partial plate search returned 63 possible matches. Teams were dispatched to check each one. Local news stations ran continuous coverage. Missing day 2 of search for Charlottesville boy. Rachel's phone rang constantly. Friends, family, news producers wanting interviews. She ignored them all except her mother, who drove up from Richmond and sat beside her in silence, holding her hand. At 9:27 p.m., Webb received a call that made him sit up straight. Say that again? He scribbled notes frantically. How certain are you? Okay, yes. Keep them there. I'm on my way. He turned to Rachel, his expression unreadable. A gas station attendant in Staunton, about 40 miles west, just called. Says a man came in this afternoon around 3:30 asking for directions to Interstate 81. He had a boy with him matching Noah's description. The kid seemed quiet, but didn't appear distressed. The attendant didn't think anything of it at the time, but his daughter saw the Amber Alert tonight and made him call. Rachel jumped to her feet. We need to go there now. Already ahead of you. The drive to Staunton took 35 minutes. Webb's lights flashing the entire way. The gas station was a rundown Exxon off Route 11, fluorescent lights buzzing over empty pumps. The attendant, a man in his 60s named Frank Delgado, met them inside the small convenience store. I've been here 23 years, you remember faces, Frank said, pulling up the security footage on an old monitor behind the counter. Something about them stuck with me, you know? The man was friendly enough, but the kid was too quiet. The footage was poor quality but clearer than the traffic camera. Webb and Rachel leaned in, watching a tall man in a baseball cap and sunglasses enter the store, a small boy beside him. The man's hand rested on the boy's shoulder. They walked to the drink cooler. The man selected 2 bottles of water, paid cash, asked for directions. The entire interaction lasted 4 minutes. Can you see his face? Rachel whispered, her heart hammering. The angle's wrong, he's got the cap pulled low, Webb muttered. But the kid. Zoom in on the kid. The technician Frank called in enhanced the image. The boy wore a blue hoodie that hadn't been in Noah's wardrobe. His face was turned down, but his profile was visible. Sandy brown hair, the right height. It could be him, Frank. Did the man say anything else? Where they were headed? He asked for the fastest route to I-81 North, said something about visiting family in Pennsylvania. I told him to take Route 11 up to Harrisonburg, merge onto 81 there. Pennsylvania. Rachel's blood ran cold. Noah doesn't have family in Pennsylvania. David's sister lives there, but she hasn't spoken to me in years since the funeral. She blamed me for the accident. Webb was already on the phone. I need an APB expanded to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland. Blue Honda Civic, Virginia plates, possibly heading north on I-81. Suspect is a white male, approximately 6 feet tall, medium build, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. Child victim in vehicle, likely disguised in blue hoodie. Consider armed and dangerous. They obtained a copy of the security footage and Frank's statement. As they prepared to leave, Frank called out, "Wait, there's one more thing." When they were leaving, the kid turned around like he was looking back at something. Or for someone, his eyes. I swear he looked scared. That's what's been bothering me. I should have said something right then. Rachel grabbed Webb's arm. He's alive. Noah's alive. We have to find that car. We will, Webb promised. Every cop from here to the Canadian border is looking now. But as they drove back to Charlottesville in the dark, Rachel couldn't shake the image of Noah's face on that grainy security footage. Looking back, looking scared, looking for her, and she wasn't there. The FBI arrived at dawn on day 3. Special Agent Diane Torres stood in the Charlottesville Police Department conference room, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, spreading photographs across the table like a dealer shuffling cards. She was 42, had worked child abduction cases for 15 years, and carried the weight of every unsolved case in the lines around her eyes. Mrs. Campbell, I know Detective Webb has been keeping you informed, but I need to bring you up to speed on where we are federally. Torres gestured to a map of Virginia, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia pinned to the wall, red dots marking sightings and dead ends. The gas station footage from Staunton is our strongest lead. We've identified the vehicle as a 2008 Honda Civic Blue, registered to a Leonard Hayes of Roanoke, Virginia. Problem is, Leonard Hayes reported that car stolen 3 weeks ago. Rachel's exhausted mind struggled to process this. Stolen? So we don't know who took it. The theft report was filed March 28th. Mr. Hayes is 71 years old, claims he parked the car at a Walmart and came out to find it gone. Roanoke PD treated it as a routine auto theft. Now we're wondering if someone was planning this for weeks. Webb leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Any surveillance from the Walmart parking lot? Cameras were down for maintenance that day. Convenient. Torres pulled out another photo, a grainy still from a highway camera. We picked up the Civic on I-81 North near Harrisonburg at 4:47 p.m. on April 17th. After that, it vanishes. No tolls, no gas stations, no traffic cameras. Either they switched vehicles or they went off highway somewhere between Harrisonburg and the Pennsylvania border. Rachel's mother, Patricia, sat beside her daughter, gripping her hand. What about rest stops? Wouldn't they need to stop eventually? We've checked every rest area, gas station, and truck stop along that corridor. Sent Noah's photo to every attendant, every manager. Nothing. Whoever took him knows how to stay invisible. The room fell silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Rachel stared at the map, at the red dots that represented her son's last known movements, each one a moment when someone saw him but didn't know to help. 3 days. 72 hours since Noah walked through that unlocked gate at Woodbrook Elementary. The statistics were brutal. After 48 hours, the chances of finding an abducted child alive dropped dramatically. "What about David's sister?" Rachel asked suddenly. "You said the man at the gas station mentioned Pennsylvania. David's sister, Linda Morrison, lives in Scranton. We had a falling out after David died, but what if? What if she's involved somehow?" Torres made a note. "Tell me about Linda Morrison." Rachel's throat tightened. The memories were painful. David died in a car accident in 2009. He was driving home from work. A semi-truck ran a red light, hit him broadside. Linda blamed me because we'd had a fight that morning about money. She said if I hadn't upset him, he would have been more alert, more careful. It was irrational, but grief makes people say terrible things. "When's the last time you had contact with her?" "The funeral. She tried to take Noah from me. Said I wasn't capable of raising him alone. That David would have wanted her to step in. She even got a lawyer, tried to file for custody. It went nowhere. She had no legal standing. After that, she stopped calling. I heard through mutual friends she moved to Scranton, got remarried." Torres exchanged a look with Webb. "We need to pay Linda Morrison a visit." By noon, Torres and Webb were on a plane to Pennsylvania. Rachel wanted to go with them but was told to stay in Charlottesville in case Noah somehow made contact. The waiting was agony. She sat in Noah's bedroom, surrounded by his things, his books arranged by height on the shelf, his telescope by the window, his bed still unmade from the last morning he slept in it. Patricia brought her tea that went cold on the nightstand. "You should eat something, sweetheart." "I can't." Rachel held one of Noah's t-shirts to her face, breathing in the fading scent of his laundry detergent and little boy sweat. "Mom, what if we never find him? What if he's just gone?" "Don't think like that, they're going to find him." But the hours crawled by with no news. At 3:15 p.m., Rachel's phone rang. "Torres. Mrs. Campbell, we're at Linda Morrison's residence in Scranton. She's not here. Neighbors say they haven't seen her in 2 weeks. Her husband, Frank Morrison, claims she went to visit a friend in Ohio, but he can't provide contact information for this friend. He seems nervous." Rachel's pulse quickened. "You think she has Noah? We're getting a warrant to search the property. In the meantime, we've issued a BOLO for Linda Morrison. I'm sending you a recent photo. Can you confirm this is David's sister?" The photo came through. Rachel's breath caught. Linda had aged. She was 43 now, her blonde hair shorter, lines around her mouth, but it was unmistakably her. "That's her." "Okay, sit tight. We'll call you the moment we know more." But more didn't come. The search of the Morrison house revealed nothing. No signs of Noah, no evidence of planning an abduction. Frank Morrison, a quiet man who worked construction, seemed genuinely confused by the police presence. Yes, Linda had been acting strange lately. No, he didn't know where she really was. Yes, she'd been talking about David a lot recently. Something about the anniversary of his death approaching. The anniversary. Rachel's heart sank. David died on April 15th, 2009, 2 days before Noah disappeared. Was that a coincidence? At 7 p.m., Torres called again. "We found Linda Morrison." "Where? Is Noah with her?" "She's in a psychiatric facility in Allentown, Pennsylvania. She checked herself in on April 10th, a week before Noah disappeared. She's been under 24-hour supervision for severe depression and suicidal ideation. She couldn't have taken Noah. I'm sorry." Another dead end. Rachel wanted to scream, to throw her phone across the room, to wake up from this nightmare. Instead, she just whispered, "Thank you for checking," and ended the call. That night, sleep was impossible. Rachel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every moment of the past 3 days. The police had chased down 37 leads, interviewed hundreds of people, checked thousands of vehicles, and Noah was still gone. At 2:34 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop looking. He's safe. You'll understand soon." Rachel's hands shook as she screenshot the message and immediately called Webb. He answered on the second ring, alert despite the hour. "What happened?" "I got a text. Someone saying Noah is safe, telling me to stop looking. Don't respond, I'm tracing it now. Keep your phone on." Within 15 minutes, police and FBI agents descended on Rachel's house. The text was traced to a burner phone, last ping from a cell tower in Lynchburg, Virginia, 60 miles south of Charlottesville, the opposite direction from the Pennsylvania sightings. This could be a diversion, Torres said, studying her laptop screen. Someone trying to throw us off the northbound trail. Or it could mean they doubled back. Or, Webb said grimly, there's more than one person involved. The possibility hung in the air like smoke. A conspiracy. Multiple abductors. Rachel's mind raced through everyone she knew. Neighbors, teachers, parents from Noah's class. Who would do this? Who would steal a child and send cryptic messages in the dead of night? At 6 a.m., the media caught wind of the text message. By 7 a.m., Rachel's front lawn was packed with news vans and reporters shouting questions. Torres held a press conference, carefully worded, asking for public assistance while revealing minimal investigative details. Rachel stood beside her, reading a prepared statement, her voice breaking. "Noah, if you can hear me, if you can see this, Mommy loves you. I'm looking for you. We're all looking for you. Please come home." The footage played on every major network. CNN, Fox News, NBC. Noah's face was everywhere. His third-grade school photo with his gap-toothed smile, the smattering of freckles across his nose. Tips flooded in, thousands of them. Most were well-meaning but useless. Some were cruel, people claiming to have killed Noah, wanting attention. Each one had to be vetted, investigated, ruled out. On day 5, a hiker in Shenandoah National Park found a child's shoe near White Oak Canyon Trail. Navy blue. Size 2. Rachel's heart stopped when Webb showed her the photo. But it wasn't Noah's. Wrong brand. False alarm. On day 7, a teacher in Richmond called to report a new student who seemed off. Quiet, withdrawn, wouldn't talk about his previous school. By the time agents arrived, they discovered the child was from a recent divorce. Traumatized but not missing. Another dead end. On day 10, the blue Honda Civic was found. A farmer in rural West Virginia, cleaning out an old barn he rarely used, discovered the car hidden under a tarp behind moldy hay bales. The plates had been removed. The interior had been wiped clean, but forensics found 3 strands of hair that matched Noah's DNA from samples taken from his bedroom. Rachel stood in the police station staring at the evidence bag containing those 3 hairs. Fine, light brown, unmistakably her son's. He had been in that car. He had been in that barn, and someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. The barn belongs to Earl Hutchins, age 68, Torres explained. He inherited the property from his father. Lives in a house a quarter mile away, says he hasn't been inside that barn in 2 years. Anyone could have hidden the car there without him knowing. So we're back to nothing, Rachel said flatly. Not nothing. We know they switched vehicles somewhere in this area. We're checking all vehicle thefts, rentals, sales in West Virginia within the past month. Someone either brought a second car or stole one. That leaves a trail, but the trail was faint. Days turned into weeks. The massive search efforts scaled down. Most volunteers returned to their lives. The news vans left Rachel's street. The FBI reassigned agents to other cases, leaving Torres and a small team to follow the dwindling leads. Rachel returned to work at the community college where she taught English, though she barely functioned. She'd break down crying in the middle of lectures. Students whispered. Colleagues didn't know what to say. She'd take lunch breaks sitting in her car, calling Noah's cell phone, the one he didn't have, just to practice what she'd say when he came home. 3 months passed, then 6, then a year. The case of Noah Campbell became another file in a cabinet drawer, another photo on a missing children's website, another family destroyed by an unsolved mystery. Rachel attended support groups for parents of missing children. She listened to their stories, some who'd been searching for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. She saw her future in their haunted eyes. On the 2nd anniversary of Noah's disappearance, April 17, 2014, Rachel visited Riverview Trail where his bicycle had been found. Someone had created a small memorial, stuffed animals, flowers, notes from classmates who'd moved on to middle school without him. She knelt in the dirt and wept until she had no tears left. That night, she received another text from an unknown number. He still remembers you. Be patient. Rachel called Torres immediately, but the agent's voice was resigned. We'll trace it, but you know how this goes. Burner phone, untraceable. Whoever's sending these knows what they're doing. Why? Rachel screamed into the phone. Why taunt me like this? Why not just tell me where he is? I don't know, Rachel. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Years blurred together. Noah's 10th birthday, his 11th, his 12th. Rachel kept his room exactly as he'd left it, a shrine to a boy frozen at age 8. She appeared on missing children specials, true crime podcasts, anywhere someone might see Noah's face and remember. Detective Webb retired in 2018. Agent Torres moved to the D.C. field office in 2020. New investigators took over the cold case, reading files, making cursory calls, finding nothing new. The world moved on. Rachel couldn't. On April 17, 2024, 12 years to the day since Noah vanished, Rachel sat in her kitchen staring at a bottle of sleeping pills. She was 41 now, looked 50. The past decade had carved grief into her face like erosion. She'd lost her job, her friends, her will to continue. The pills promised peace, oblivion, an end to the not knowing. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. "Mrs. Campbell?" A young male voice. Uncertain. "This is Officer Dale Chen with the Tennessee State Police. We need you to come to Nashville. It's about your son." The bottle of pills slipped from Rachel's hand, scattering across the kitchen floor. Rachel's hands trembled so violently she could barely hold the steering wheel. The 8-hour drive from Charlottesville to Nashville blurred into a fever dream of rest stops and gas stations, where she couldn't remember filling the tank. Officer Chen had been frustratingly vague on the phone. A young man, approximately 20 years old, irregular documentation, DNA test pending confirmation. But the preliminary match was strong, very strong. She'd called Torres immediately. The former FBI agent, now retired from fieldwork, had connections. "I'm making calls, Rachel. I'll have people meet you there. Don't go in alone. I'll be on the next flight out." But Rachel couldn't wait. She'd thrown clothes in a bag, left her house at 3 a.m. and drove through the darkness with her high beams cutting through the Virginia mountains, across Tennessee's rolling hills, her mind unable to process what might be waiting for her. Noah, 20 years old, 12 years gone. The impossibility of it crashed over her in waves. Her baby, who'd left home at 8 with a gap-toothed smile and a Star Wars backpack, was now a man. Had he grown tall like David? Did he still have the same green eyes? Would he even recognize her? The Tennessee State Police headquarters was a modern building in downtown Nashville, all glass and steel reflecting the morning sun. Rachel parked haphazardly, not caring about the lines, and ran inside. Officer Chen met her in the lobby, a young Asian-American man in his late 20s with kind eyes. "Mrs. Campbell, I'm Dale Chen. Please come with me." "Where is he? Can I see him?" "He's in an interview room with Detective Sarah Brennan and a social worker." "Mrs. Campbell, before you go in, I need to prepare you. He's confused. He doesn't remember you clearly. He's been living under a different name with a different story about his life. This is going to be difficult." Rachel's legs felt like water. "I don't care. I need to see my son." Chen led her down a corridor, through security doors that required key cards, to a room with a two-way mirror. Inside, Rachel could see a young man sitting at a table, his profile turned toward a female detective. Her breath caught in her chest. He was tall, over 6 feet, with sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead. His face had lost all traces of childhood roundness, replaced by sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw. But the eyes, God, the eyes were David's, green, almond-shaped, with the same slight downward tilt at the outer corners. "That's him," Rachel whispered. "That's my Noah. The DNA test will confirm, but we're fairly certain. His fingerprints from an ID application flagged in the system due to inconsistencies in his birth records. When we brought him in for questioning, he seemed genuinely confused. Said his name was Ethan Wheeler, that he'd lived in Tennessee his whole life. But there's no birth certificate for Ethan Wheeler matching his date of birth. No medical records before age 9. His whole documented existence starts in 2013. Who was he with? Who took him?" Chen pulled up a file on a tablet. "A man named Robert Wheeler, 51 years old, worked as an electrician, died 2 years ago from a heart attack. Wheeler claimed Ethan was his nephew, that his sister died and he took custody. But we can't find any records of this sister, any adoption paperwork, any legal guardianship documents. It was all fabricated." Rachel pressed her hand against the glass. Noah, Ethan, was fidgeting with a paper cup of water, looking anxious. Detective Brennan was speaking to him gently, showing him photographs. Rachel saw one of them. It was Noah's 3rd grade school photo, the one that had been plastered across every news station 12 years ago. "Can I go in now?" "Mrs. Campbell, we need to handle this carefully. He doesn't believe us yet. We've shown him the missing child reports, the news coverage, but he thinks we're mistaken. The trauma of the abduction, combined with years of being told a false narrative, has created significant psychological barriers. He needs to remember on his own terms. I'm his mother. He'll know me. Chen exchanged glances with another officer. Okay, but please go slowly. Let Detective Brennan facilitate. Rachel entered the interview room on unsteady legs. Noah, she couldn't think of him as Ethan, looked up, his expression wary. Up close, she could see more of David in him. The slight cleft in his chin, the way his left eyebrow arched higher than his right. But there was also wariness in his eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there at 8 years old. Ethan, Detective Brennan said gently, this is Rachel Campbell. We've been telling you about her. Noah stared at Rachel, his face unreadable. I don't know you. The words hit like a physical blow. Rachel lowered herself into the chair across from him, tears already streaming down her face. Noah, it's me, it's Mom. I've been looking for you for 12 years. My name is Ethan. My mom died when I was little. My Uncle Rob raised me. His voice was defensive, scared. I don't know what kind of scam this is, but you had a stuffed elephant named Captain Trunks. You slept with it every night until you were 7, and you'd get embarrassed when friends came over. Your favorite food was macaroni and cheese from the box, not homemade, because you said the powdered cheese tasted better. You were afraid of thunderstorms, so we'd make blanket forts in the living room and read comics with flashlights until the storm passed. Noah's face paled. His hands gripped the edge of the table. How do you know that? Because I'm your mother. Because I tucked you in every single night. Because I taught you to ride a bike, and you fell 3 times before you got it, and you cried, but then you got back on and tried again. Rachel pulled out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling through photos. Look at these. She showed him pictures from before. Noah on his 6th birthday with a Batman cake. Noah at his first day of school. Noah and David building a snowman. In every photo, the same face, the same green eyes, just smaller, rounder, unmistakably him. Noah stared at the phone, his breathing becoming shallow. No. Uncle Rob said my mom died in a car accident. He said, there was a car accident, Rachel said softly. But it was your father who died, David Campbell. He died when you were 3. You cried for weeks. You'd ask when Daddy was coming home, and I had to tell you over and over that he wasn't, that he was in heaven. Something cracked in Noah's expression. His hand moved to his face, touching his cheekbone as if trying to remember. There's a scar. Right here. I fell off my bike when I was little. Uncle Rob said it happened when I was 5, but you were 7, Rachel finished. You were racing with the neighbor's kid, Tyler Henderson. You hit a pothole and flew over the handlebars. I took you to the emergency room, 4 stitches, you were so brave. You didn't even cry until we got home. Noah's eyes filled with tears. His carefully constructed world was crumbling. This doesn't make sense. Why would Uncle Rob lie? Why would he tell me I was someone else? Detective Brennan leaned forward. Ethan, Noah, we're still investigating that. But Robert Wheeler wasn't your uncle. We believe he abducted you from Charlottesville, Virginia in April 2012. You were 8 years old. Your bike was found near Riverview Trail. The entire state searched for you. I don't remember any of that. I don't remember Virginia. You might not. The social worker interjected, a woman named Dr. Melissa Grant. Childhood amnesia, combined with potential trauma and years of being told a different story, can create false memories. Your brain adapted to survive. Rachel reached across the table, her hand stopping inches from Noah's. May I? He hesitated, then nodded. Rachel gently took his hand, larger now, calloused, a man's hand. But she could still feel the shape of the little boy's fingers she'd held crossing streets and walking into kindergarten. A sob escaped her throat. I never stopped looking for you. Not for one single day. Noah looked down at their joined hands, tears spilling onto the table. I have dreams sometimes about a woman with dark hair. She's singing something. A lullaby, I think. Uncle Rob said it was just my imagination. You are my sunshine, Rachel whispered. I sang it every night before bed. Noah's face crumpled. Oh my God, it's real, it's all real. The dam broke. 12 years of suppressed memories, buried identity, stolen childhood came flooding back in fragments. Noah doubled over, sobbing, and Rachel moved around the table, pulling him into her arms. He was so much bigger now, but he clung to her like he had as a little boy, his whole body shaking. I'm sorry, he gasped between sobs. I'm so sorry, I don't remember everything. I'm sorry I left. No, baby, this wasn't your fault. You didn't leave. You were taken. None of this was your fault. They held each other while Detective Brennan and Dr. Grant quietly stepped out, giving them privacy. Officer Chen watched through the two-way mirror, wiping his own eyes. After 20 minutes, Noah pulled back, wiping his face with his sleeve. What happened? How did he take me? Rachel told him everything she knew. The unlocked gate at school, the bicycle at Riverview Trail, the gas station in Staunton, the stolen Honda Civic, the years of dead ends and false leads. Noah listened, his expression cycling between shock, anger, and grief. He seemed like a good person. Uncle Rob. He was strict, but not mean. He homeschooled me, taught me to work with my hands. We moved around a lot. Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, back to Tennessee. He said it was for work, but now, he was staying ahead of the law, Detective Brennan said, re-entering with Agent Torres, who'd arrived during the reunion. Robert Wheeler had a criminal record. Did 3 years for fraud in the 90s, 2 years for identity theft in 2005. He was smart, careful, changed locations frequently, kept you isolated, homeschooled so you wouldn't be in the system. Torres pulled up Robert Wheeler's photo on her laptop, a hard-faced man with graying hair and cold blue eyes. Rachel had never seen him before in her life. Do you know who he is, Mrs. Campbell? Any connection to your family? No, I've never seen this man. Noah, do you know why Robert took you? Did he ever explain? Ever mention your real mother? Noah shook his head, confusion written across his features. He barely talked about the past. If I asked questions, he'd shut down, say it was better not to dwell on sad things. The only time he mentioned my mother, my supposed mother, was to say she'd loved me but died too young. He made it sound noble, like he'd rescued me from foster care. We're going through Wheeler's belongings now, Torres said. He rented a small house outside Nashville. We need to understand his motive. This level of planning, the fake identity, the sustained deception, this wasn't random. He targeted Noah specifically. But why? Rachel's voice broke. Why my son? The question hung in the air, unanswered. The investigation was just beginning to unearth the truth. Over the next 3 days, forensic teams tore apart Robert Wheeler's life. His house revealed a man who lived Spartanly. Minimal furniture, few possessions. But in a locked closet, they found boxes, documents, and the truth began to emerge. Robert Wheeler had a daughter, Emily Wheeler. She died in 2011 at age 7 from leukemia. The medical records were heartbreaking. 18 months of treatment, failed bone marrow transplants, desperate experimental therapies that didn't work. Robert's wife, Jennifer, left him 6 months after Emily died, unable to cope with the grief. And in those boxes were photos of Emily, a little girl with blonde hair and a bright smile. Next to those photos were pictures of Noah, printed from news articles, from Rachel's Facebook page, from school websites. Torres laid them out on the conference table. He was looking for a replacement, a boy approximately Emily's age. He'd been watching your family, Mrs. Campbell. We found evidence he'd been to Charlottesville at least a dozen times in the months before the abduction. He learned Noah's routine, the school layout, everything. Rachel stared at the photos, nausea rising in her throat. He stole my son to replace his dead daughter. It's more complicated than that. We found a journal. Torres opened a worn notebook, filled with Wheeler's handwriting. He writes about losing Emily, about how the world became meaningless without her. Then he writes about seeing Noah at a park in Charlottesville. He was there visiting a client for an electrical job. He saw Noah playing, laughing, and something in his mind snapped. He convinced himself that God had sent him a second chance, that he was meant to save a boy who would otherwise end up alone. He'd somehow found out David was dead, misinterpreted or fabricated some scenario where he believed you were an unfit mother. That's insane. Yes, it was delusional, but in his mind he wasn't kidnapping. He was rescuing. Noah sat in the corner of the room, head in his hands, processing the revelation that the man who raised him was a grief-stricken father who'd stolen someone else's child to fill the void left by his daughter's death. Did he ever hurt other children? Was I the only one? As far as we can determine, yes. You were the only one. This was specific to his loss of Emily, his psychological break. He didn't harm you physically because in his delusion, you were his second chance at being a father. But he destroyed my life, Noah said quietly, and hers. He looked at Rachel, and the pain in his eyes reflected her own. They'd both lost 12 years, 12 birthdays, 12 Christmases, middle school, high school, first loves, driver's license, graduations, all stolen by a broken man's desperate attempt to resurrect his dead daughter. The case made international headlines. Missing child found alive after 12 years. Talk shows wanted interviews. Publishers wanted book deals. Everyone wanted a piece of their tragedy turned miracle. But Rachel and Noah retreated from the spotlight. They needed time. Time to rebuild a relationship fractured by 12 years of absence. Noah moved back to Virginia, into his childhood home, into his bedroom that Rachel had preserved like a museum. He stared at his 8-year-old self's possessions, the Star Wars posters, the elementary school projects, the toys he no longer remembered playing with. "It's like looking at a stranger," he told Rachel one evening, sitting on his too small childhood bed. "I know intellectually that this was me, but I can't connect to him. That boy is gone. Then we'll get to know who you are now," Rachel said, sitting beside him. "We'll start from here." The first month back in Charlottesville was the hardest. Noah sat across from Dr. Evelyn Park, a trauma specialist who'd worked with recovered abduction victims for 20 years. Her office was deliberately calming. Soft lighting, comfortable chairs, plants in every corner. But comfort felt impossible when you were dissecting the architecture of your own false existence. "Tell me about a typical day with Robert," Dr. Park said, her pen poised over her notepad. Noah stared at his hands, still surprised sometimes by how large they were, how much his body had changed in years he couldn't fully account for. "We'd wake up early, 5:30 usually. He'd make breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee for him, orange juice for me. Then we'd work. If we were on a job site, I'd help him with electrical installations. If not, he'd have me study. Math, history, science. He was strict about education. Did you have friends? Contact with other children? Not really. We moved too much." He said it was because of work opportunities, but now I realize he was paranoid about staying in one place too long. The longest we stayed anywhere was 8 months in Knoxville when I was 15. I met a girl at the library, Sarah. We talked a few times. Noah's voice grew distant. I thought maybe we could be friends, but then Uncle Robert, found out and we moved again 2 weeks later. Dr. Park made notes. Did he ever become violent? No, never hit me. But there was this constant pressure, this underlying fear that if I asked too many questions, something bad would happen. He'd get this look in his eyes. Not angry, but afraid. Like my curiosity might destroy everything. So I learned to stop asking. That's a form of control, Noah. Emotional manipulation can be just as damaging as physical abuse. Noah nodded, though the word abuse still felt foreign. Robert had fed him, clothed him, taught him skills. In his twisted way, he'd cared. That was the confusing part, separating the man who'd taught him to read electrical blueprints from the man who'd stolen 12 years of his life. Back at the house on Ivy Lane, Rachel struggled with her own demons. She'd spent 12 years imagining the worst, Noah dead, Noah suffering, Noah terrified and alone. The reality was somehow harder to process. Noah had lived, he'd grown up, but he'd grown up as someone else, shaped by a man who had no right to shape him. She watched through the kitchen window as Noah worked in the backyard, repairing the fence that had fallen into disrepair during her years of depression. He moved with confidence, measuring boards, drilling screws. The skills Robert had taught him now applied to restoring the home he didn't remember leaving. Patricia joined her at the window. "He's good with his hands. David was like that too." "I keep looking for pieces of David in him," Rachel admitted. "The way he tilts his head when he's concentrating, that little crease between his eyebrows. But then he does something. The way he drinks coffee, the way he stands with his weight on his right leg, and I realize those are Robert's mannerisms. That man infected my son with his habits, his speech patterns, his worldview. But Noah's still in there. Give it time. Time. The word everyone kept using, as if time could repair what had been broken, as if time could give back what had been stolen. Agent Torres called in early June with new information. "Rachel, we've been digging deeper into Robert Wheeler's background. We found something disturbing." Rachel put the call on speaker so Noah, who'd just come inside, could hear. "What is it?" Wheeler had a connection to Charlottesville that predates Noah's abduction. His wife Jennifer, the one who left him after their daughter died, she was originally from Virginia, grew up in Albemarle County. Her maiden name was Jennifer Harding. Rachel's blood ran cold. Harding? That name sounds familiar. It should. Jennifer Harding went to Charlottesville High School, graduated in 1998. Want to guess who else was in that graduating class? I don't know. I graduated in 1999. Rachel stopped. Her brain connected the dots. David Campbell graduated in 1998. Bingo. We pulled yearbooks. Jennifer Harding and David Campbell were in the same homeroom. We're checking to see if they had any relationship, but the connection is there. Noah stood up, his face pale. "You're saying Robert knew my father?" "We don't know the extent of their connection yet, but it adds another layer to why he targeted your family specifically. This wasn't just about finding a replacement for Emily. There was something personal. The revelation sent Rachel spiraling into old memories. David had dated several girls in high school before they met. Had Jennifer Harding been one of them? She called David's mother, who still lived in Richmond despite her failing health. Jennifer Harding? Margaret Campbell's voice was thin and weak over the phone. Oh yes, David dated her junior year. It didn't last long. 3, 4 months maybe. She was a sweet girl, but very intense. David said she was too clingy, wanted too much too fast. Why are you asking about her after all these years? Rachel explained the connection to Robert Wheeler, to Noah's abduction. Margaret was silent for a long moment. Dear God, do you think, could she have been involved? The FBI is trying to locate her now. She left Robert Wheeler after their daughter died and hasn't been in contact with him since, according to records. But they need to interview her. Finding Jennifer Wheeler, formerly Harding, proved difficult. She'd moved frequently after the divorce, had no social media presence, worked cash jobs that left minimal paper trails. It took 3 weeks in collaboration with multiple law enforcement agencies to track her down to a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. Agent Torres flew out personally to conduct the interview. Rachel and Noah waited anxiously for the call, which came late on a Thursday evening. I spoke with Jennifer Wheeler for 4 hours, Torres said, exhaustion evident in her voice. She's a broken woman. The loss of Emily destroyed her, and the guilt of leaving Robert has eaten at her for years. But she had no knowledge of the abduction. When I showed her Noah's photos, she broke down completely. Did she know about David? Rachel pressed. Yes. And here's where it gets complicated. Jennifer and David dated in high school. It was brief, but apparently significant for Jennifer. She told me she was in love with him, thought they'd get married someday. When David broke up with her to date someone else senior year, she was devastated. She followed his life from a distance through mutual friends, social media eventually. She knew when he married you. She knew when he died. Noah interjected. Did she tell Robert about my father? She claimed she mentioned David maybe twice in their entire marriage. Once when they were first dating, talking about high school boyfriends, and once after Emily died when she was spiraling emotionally. She said something about how life was unfair, how people who deserved happiness, like David, died young while they were left to suffer. That's when Robert became fixated, Rachel said, understanding dawning. He learned about David's death, did his own research, found out David had a son. In his disturbed mind, he saw it as fate. He'd lost a child. David had died leaving a child. Therefore, he was meant to take that child. That's exactly what Jennifer believes. She said Robert became obsessed with the concept of cosmic balance in the months after Emily died. He'd talk about how the universe took from some and gave to others, and that he deserved compensation for his loss. She thought it was just grief talking. She never imagined he'd act on it. The pieces were coming together, creating a picture of a tragedy built on layers of other tragedies. Emily's death, Jennifer and David's teenage romance, David's fatal accident, Robert's psychological break, all of it converging on one April afternoon when an 8-year-old boy walked through an unlocked gate. As summer progressed, Noah began attending Piedmont Community College, taking classes in electrical engineering, a field he'd grown to love, despite its connection to Robert. Rachel went back to teaching, trying to rebuild the career she'd neglected during the lost years. They established new routines, breakfast together each morning, dinner most evenings, though Noah often went out with the few friends he'd started making, young adults his age who knew his story but treated him normally. Rachel attended therapy once a week. Noah went twice. One evening in late July, Noah found a box in the attic that Rachel had sealed away years ago. Inside were videos, home movies from when he was little. He brought the box down to the living room. "Can we watch these?" he asked hesitantly. Rachel hadn't looked at them in over a decade. The pain had been too sharp, but Noah needed to see, needed to remember. They sat together on the couch while Noah's 4-year-old self flickered across the TV screen. "Look at Daddy's silly face." Video Noah shrieked with laughter as David made exaggerated expressions. "That's my birthday party," Noah said softly, watching his 6-year-old self blow out candles on a cake. "I remember that cake. It was Batman. I remember being so excited about the cape Mom bought me." "You wore that cape for 3 months straight," Rachel said, tears streaming down her face. "To school, to bed, everywhere. We had to fight to get you to take it off for baths." They watched hours of footage. Christmases, trips to the beach, mundane moments of a childhood interrupted. Noah cried. Rachel cried. But there was also laughter, recognition, connection to a past that was starting to feel real again. "He loved me," Noah said, as the final video ended. 8-year-old Noah learning to ride his bike, David running beside him, both of them laughing. "My dad really loved me. He did. So much. I wish I remembered him better. I have these fragments. A smell that might be his cologne, a voice that could be his. But it's like trying to hold on to smoke. We'll keep watching. We'll keep talking. The memories might not come back completely, but we'll build new ones. We'll honor what was lost by living fully now." Noah nodded, wiping his eyes. "Robert taught me that work was the most important thing, that providing, being useful was what made a man valuable. But watching Dad in these videos, seeing how he just enjoyed being with me, no agenda, no lesson, that's what a father should be." Robert was sick, Noah. Grief broke something fundamental in him. It doesn't excuse what he did, but understanding it might help you heal. As summer turned to fall, legal matters had to be addressed. Noah legally reclaimed his birth name, Noah David Campbell. His years as Ethan Wheeler were officially erased from records, though not from his memory. He testified before a grand jury about his captivity, though Robert Wheeler being dead meant no criminal trial. Civil lawyers discussed possible lawsuits against the school system that had failed to secure the gate, against law enforcement agencies that had missed crucial evidence in the early days. But Rachel refused. "Money won't give us back those years. I just want to move forward." The case officially closed in October 2024. The FBI report concluded that Robert Wheeler, acting alone, had abducted Noah Campbell in a psychotic break following the death of his daughter. The connection to David Campbell through Jennifer Harding was noted as a contributing factor to the targeting, but not a conspiracy. Jennifer Wheeler was cleared of any involvement. Noah framed the final missing persons poster of himself, the one that had hung in police stations and post offices for 12 years, and hung it in his room, not as a shrine to victimhood, but as a reminder of where he'd been and how far he'd come. On what would have been his 13th birthday, if he'd never been taken, May 3, 2025, Rachel and Noah visited David's grave together. It was Noah's first visit as an adult who understood what he'd lost. "I'm sorry I don't remember you better," Noah said to the headstone. "But Mom's told me everything. You were a good man, a good father. I'm going to try to live up to that." They planted flowers, David's favorites, yellow roses, and sat in the cemetery grass as the sun set over Charlottesville. "What do we do now?" Noah asked. Rachel took his hand. "We live. We heal. We make sure Robert Wheeler's crime doesn't define the rest of our lives. That feels impossible some days. I know, but we're together now. That has to count for something." As darkness fell, they walked back to the car, past rows of graves marking other lives cut short, other families fractured by loss. But they walked together, mother and son, beginning the long journey of rebuilding what had been stolen one day at a time. 1 year after the reunion, Noah stood in front of a lecture hall at the University of Virginia, his hands sweating as 200 students settled into their seats. The criminology professor, Dr. Amanda Richardson, had invited him to speak about his experience as part of a course on child abduction cases. Rachel sat in the back row, having driven over to provide moral support. "My name is Noah Campbell," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. 12 years ago, I disappeared from Charlottesville, Virginia. For the next decade, I lived as someone else, believed a completely different story about who I was and where I came from. Today, I want to talk about what happens after you're found, the part the news stories don't cover." The room was silent, every student riveted. Noah had grown into his father's height, standing just over 6'2". His frame filled out from the skinny 8-year-old who'd vanished. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans, his hair cut short. To anyone who didn't know his story, he looked like any other 20-year-old college student, but the weight in his eyes told a different story. People think recovery is like flipping a switch. You're found, you're reunited with your family, everything goes back to normal. But there is no normal to go back to. The person I was at 8 years old no longer exists. The person I became while I was gone, Ethan Wheeler, he doesn't exist either. I'm somewhere in between, trying to build a third person from the fragments of 2 incomplete lives. He spoke for 45 minutes, detailing the psychological challenges of recovered memory, the guilt of not recognizing his own mother, the complicated grief of mourning a captor who'd been the only parental figure he'd known for 12 formative years. Several students cried. One raised her hand during Q&A. "Do you hate him, Robert Wheeler?" Noah considered the question carefully. I've spent hundreds of hours in therapy working through that. Hate is too simple. What he did was unforgivable. He stole my childhood, my mother's peace, my father's memory. But he also fed me, taught me, took care of me when I was sick. My therapist says it's called traumatic bonding. You can simultaneously recognize someone destroyed your life while also having cared about them. It's a horrible contradiction to live with. After the lecture, students lined up to thank him, to share their own stories of family trauma, of searching for missing relatives. Rachel watched from the side as Noah handled each interaction with grace and maturity that broke her heart with pride. In the parking lot, Noah leaned against Rachel's car, emotionally exhausted. That was harder than I expected. You did beautifully. Your father would be so proud. Would he? Noah looked at his mother, vulnerability flashing across his features. I keep wondering what kind of man I would have become if none of this happened. If Dad had lived, if I'd never been taken, would I be better? Worse? Different? You'd be different, Rachel said honestly, but not necessarily better. Trauma shaped you, Noah, but it doesn't define you. The compassion you showed those students, the self-awareness, the strength, those are yours. Those are real. They drove to a diner on the corner of Main Street, their usual Thursday night spot. Over burgers and fries, they talked about Noah's application to UVA's electrical engineering program for the fall, his part-time job at a local contractor's office, the girl he'd started dating, a nursing student named Maya who knew his story but treated him like a person rather than a headline. She asked me to meet her parents next week, Noah said, dragging a fry through ketchup. I'm terrified. Why? Because what do I say? Hi, I'm Noah. I was kidnapped as a child and raised by my abductor for 12 years. Pass the potatoes? Rachel laughed despite herself. You say, hi, I'm Noah, I'm studying engineering, and I'm crazy about your daughter. The rest is just details. Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose life story sounds like a Lifetime movie. The joke was progress. 6 months ago, Noah couldn't reference his abduction without shutting down emotionally. Now, with therapy and time, he'd developed a dark humor about it, a coping mechanism Dr. Park encouraged as healthy processing. But not every day was progress. Some mornings, Noah woke up calling for Uncle Rob, forgetting for those first confused seconds that Robert was dead, that he wasn't Ethan anymore. Some nights, Rachel still jolted awake at 2 a.m., compelled to check Noah's room to make sure he was still there, hadn't vanished again into the Virginia night. In November 2025, a true crime documentary about Noah's case premiered on Netflix. Rachel and Noah had been interviewed extensively, along with Detective Webb, Agent Torres, and dozens of others involved in the search and recovery. They watched it together in Rachel's living room, tissues and popcorn in equal supply. The documentary was fair but painful. It showed the investigation's missteps, the focus on Marcus Holt that wasted precious time, the failure to find the Honda Civic sooner, the communication breakdowns between jurisdictions. It interviewed other families with missing children who'd never been found, their grief forever unresolved. This could have been us, Rachel whispered as a mother on screen sobbed about her daughter missing for 23 years. If you hadn't needed that ID, if the system hadn't flagged your fingerprints, but it did, Noah said firmly. We can't live in the what-ifs. We're here. We're together. The documentary ended with footage of Noah and Rachel at David's grave, planting yellow roses. The final title card read, Noah Campbell is currently studying electrical engineering at the University of Virginia. He and his mother Rachel continue to advocate for improved Amber Alert systems and better training for identifying recovered abduction victims. Robert Wheeler died in 2022, taking many answers to his grave. Jennifer Wheeler declined to participate in this documentary. The gate at Woodbrook Elementary where Noah disappeared has since been permanently locked and is monitored by security cameras. Reviews were overwhelmingly positive, but with it came renewed media attention. Reporters camped outside their house again. Noah's professors had to run interference when journalists tried to infiltrate his classes. The invasion of privacy that had defined the initial abduction now repeated itself in his recovery. I hate this, Noah said after a particularly aggressive tabloid journalist cornered him at the grocery store, asking about his relationship with Robert Wheeler. I'm not a spectacle, I'm not entertainment. I know, sweetheart, but it'll die down again. It always does. And it did. By December, the news cycle moved on to other tragedies, other stories. Noah and Rachel reclaimed their quiet life. Christmas 2025 marked 13 years since their last Christmas together. Rachel had kept every ornament from Noah's childhood. The handprint clay Santa from preschool, the popsicle stick reindeer from first grade. They decorated the tree together, Noah handling each ornament carefully, triggers for memories that sometimes surfaced and sometimes didn't. "I remember this one," he said, holding a felt snowman. "I made it with Dad. We used buttons for eyes and he let me pick which fabric to use. You were 4. You insisted it had to be blue felt, even though snowmen are usually white. You said blue was a snow color too." Noah smiled, hanging the ornament on a prominent branch. "I was a weird kid. You were a wonderful kid. You are a wonderful young man." They spent Christmas morning in pajamas, drinking hot chocolate, opening modest gifts. Noah gave Rachel a framed photo he'd found in her attic. Rachel and David and toddler Noah at the beach, all 3 laughing, frozen in a moment before tragedy rewrote their story. She cried, holding the frame to her chest. "Thank you. This is perfect. I figured we spend too much time looking at the sad photos. We should remember the happy times too." In January 2026, Noah started classes at UVA, walking the same campus his father had attended, sitting in lecture halls where David had once studied. Felt like connecting to a ghost. But it also felt right, like closing a circle that Robert Wheeler had tried to break. He joined the engineering club, made friends who knew his story but didn't define him by it, got a tattoo on his shoulder, coordinates for the house on Ivy Lane, a permanent reminder of where he belonged. Maya met Rachel over dinner and they bonded instantly over their mutual love of terrible reality TV shows. Life began to feel, if not normal, then livable, but trauma has a long shadow. In March, Noah had his first major panic attack, triggered by seeing an electrician's truck identical to the one Robert had driven. Maya found him hyperventilating in his car, unable to breathe, convinced he was back in Tennessee, that the past 4 years had been a dream. Dr. Park increased his therapy sessions. They worked on grounding techniques, on separating past from present, on accepting that triggers might always exist but didn't have to control him. It was slow, difficult work, but Noah did the work. Rachel, too, continued her own therapy. She'd lost 12 years to grief and guilt, her life suspended in the hope of a return she'd begun to believe would never come. Now that Noah was back, she had to learn how to be a mother to a grown son, not the 8-year-old frozen in her memory. "I keep wanting to protect him from everything," she told her therapist, Dr. Morrison. "But he's 20 years old. He needs independence, not coddling. You're grieving the years you missed while simultaneously being grateful for his return. Those feelings can coexist." They could coexist, but it wasn't easy. Rachel had to stop herself from texting Noah, constantly asking where he was, what he was doing. Had to resist the urge to install tracking apps on his phone. Had to trust that the world wouldn't steal him again. In April 2026, 14 years since the abduction, Noah and Rachel participated in a ceremony at Woodbrook Elementary. The school had commissioned a memorial garden, not just for Noah, but for all missing children from Albemarle County. Bronze plaques bore names and dates. Noah's read, Noah Campbell, missing April 17, 2012, found April 17, 2024. Principal Bradshaw, who still worked at the school and had never forgiven himself for the unlocked gate, spoke tearfully about improved security measures, about never taking a child's safety for granted. Students released yellow balloons into the April sky, yellow for hope, for coming home. Noah planted a tree in the garden, a red oak that would grow for decades, a living memorial to survival. As he patted dirt around the sapling's roots, Rachel saw him not as the 8-year-old who'd vanished, or the confused 20-year-old who'd returned, but as the man he was becoming. Scarred but strong, broken but healing. That evening, they returned to Riverview Trail, to the spot where Noah's bicycle had been found 14 years earlier. The memorial others had created was gone now, reclaimed by nature. They stood in silence, listening to the river that had nearly become Noah's grave but hadn't. "I forgive him," Noah said suddenly. "Robert Wheeler. I forgive him for being broken enough to break me. I don't forget what he did. I'll never forget. But I forgive him because holding on to hate would be like letting him take even more from me." Rachel took her son's hand, still surprised sometimes by its size, its strength. "That's very brave. It's survival. I can't move forward if I'm anchored to anger." They walked back to the car as the sun set, casting long shadows through the oak trees that had witnessed Noah's disappearance, and now witnessed his healing. The trail that had once represented the end of a life now represented the beginning of a new one. Life continued. Noah graduated with honors in 2029, got a job with a renewable energy company, moved into his own apartment but visited Rachel every Sunday for dinner. Maya became his fiancée, then his wife. They talked about having children someday, about giving Rachel the grandchildren she'd thought she'd never have. Rachel published a memoir in 2030, not about the abduction but about resilience, about the families of missing children, about never giving up hope. The proceeds went to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Detective Webb, now fully retired, occasionally called to check in. Agent Torres sent Christmas cards. The community of people who'd searched for Noah, who'd never stopped believing, remained connected, bound by the miracle of his return. On April 17, 2032, 20 years since the abduction, Noah and Rachel returned to David's grave with Noah's daughter, Emily Campbell, age 2. Named for the little girl whose death had set tragedy in motion, Emily represented hope renewed, cycles broken, life persisting despite attempts to end it. "Tell Grandpa about school," Rachel encouraged as Emily toddled among the gravestones. "I'm not in school yet, Gamma," Emily protested with a giggle. Noah lifted his daughter, pointing to David's name on the headstone. "That's your grandpa. He was brave and kind and loved your daddy very much. Even though you never met him, he's part of you." "Like a story?" Emily asked. "Exactly like a story," Rachel said, tears in her eyes. "The best kind of story, the kind that's true." As they left the cemetery, Emily chattering about butterflies and flowers, Noah turned back once more. The yellow roses they'd planted had taken root, blooming year after year, survivors like them. The story of Noah Campbell would always include the 12 years he was lost. But it would also include the years he was found, the life he rebuilt, the family he created. Robert Wheeler had tried to erase Noah's past and write a new future. He'd failed. The boy who vanished in 2012 had returned as a man in 2024, and that man chose every day to live fully, to love deeply, to honor the childhood stolen by refusing to let it steal his adulthood too. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some have something better, true endings, where survival isn't about erasing pain but about building something beautiful despite it. Noah Campbell survived, and more than that, he lived.